thank you for having me. Thank you for the no Luke with Duke. I appreciate that very much as well. If you don't know about me, I'm an independent journalist. I started off my career very young. When I learned pretty much that almost everything in our society was an absolute lie, I decided to try to personally fix it by going up to those who I thought were personally responsible. And I had a video camera, and I went up to David Rockefeller, Lord Jacob Rothschild, Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Tony Blair, Bill Clinton. And if I never got a satisfactory answer, I usually just ended up calling these people globalist scumbags. So after having very interesting relations with a lot of banking and government officials, I moved on to doing a lot of safer things like covering protests and wars. And I've been all over the world covering protests in Hong Kong and in France. I covered the currency reset in India by accident. That was not fun. I covered the war zones in Somalia. I covered how Bitcoin was twice the value in Zimbabwe. And I'm most known for of course, raiding Jeffrey Epstein's island after he allegedly killed himself. And then there was independent video footage of someone looking like him shown on his island, so I decided to investigate that. But regarding this specific panel, what I wanted to ask is going to be very specific when it comes to governments, the establishment, Bitcoin, and the ever-changing world. But before we do that, who are you guys and why are you here?
I'm Benjamin Dichter. I'm one of the leaders and the spokesperson for the Canadian Freedom Convoy. And you just triggered a thought of mine when you mentioned Jeffrey Epstein. It's funny, Jeffrey Epstein didn't have his bank accounts, lines of credit, credit cards, all his assets frozen by the government. But we did, for having a peaceful protest with bouncy castles. But anyways, thank you everybody who was watching us and supporting us. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, of what the next step is.
Awesome. Cool. Aleksandar Svetski, I founded an app called Amber, but these days I'm doing a lot more writing. Just launched a book called The Uncommunist Manifesto. So check that out, we'll be doing some signings tomorrow. Otherwise, I'm kind of like the toxic guy who tries to keep things in check, so I'm going to be bashing things over the head in a moment.
Let's go!
Yeah!
I'm Francis, I'm the founder of Bull Bitcoin. I got into Bitcoin to destroy the Bank of International Settlement and to bring an end to the era of central banking. And then I got interested in removing the power from governments into the hands of the citizens and decentralize the governance system. But now I'm staying into Bitcoin to take revenge on the governments and for what they did to us, and we will make them pay.
Wartime, baby.
I am Giacomo Zucco. I represent the diversity quota because I'm the only guy on this couch without a six-pack. So and I'm the tallest. So, looking forward to discuss wartime Bitcoin.
Yeah, this is definitely a powerful panel. I hope there's not a drone strike that's going to take all of us out. It's a big loss to the freedom community. But I would start off by saying, I think it's fair to say that there's a war on for people's minds, but I would even go further and say that there's a financial war happening right now by a lot of big banks, central controllers. They're launching bombs of inflation. Some people would call it a controlled demolition of the economy in order to, some people think, bring on the Great Reset. What role do you think Bitcoin plays in this? Will it be a net benefit? Will it be a negative? And how do you see it with the ever-changing society as we're seeing very drastic changes to our daily lives? Go ahead.
Well, I think our experience in Canada was the primary use case that proved the fact that Bitcoin is the life raft. If you want to get away from this craziness, then tell all your friends and families about Bitcoin. Show the videos that we have of truckers who were sitting there in the cold for 3 weeks, where the government tried to starve them of fuel and to freeze them and their families, where the Bitcoin community came together, printed a bunch of paper wallets, and started distributing to those truckers and say, thank you for saving our country. Everything else was locked down, but the government wasn't able to stop Bitcoin. And a special thanks to Nunchuck Wallet for that epic troll of the Ontario Supreme Court. It was great.
Yeah, look, I mean, the thing we have to realize here is that when we talk about freedom of speech, the only freedom of speech that matters is the freedom of expression. Like, words are cheap, talk is cheap. What actually matters is where you put the product of your labor, like how you choose to express yourself. And the line that actually matters is where the product of your labor, so your money, how you can actually spend it. The only game in town is Bitcoin. So I said this last year and I'm going to say it again. It's the line that will separate slaves from serfs, slaves from free people, is Bitcoin or slave coin, and everything else is slave coin. And to the point of wartime Bitcoin that we're discussing here is that during wartime, we're going to have governments to battle, we're going to have central banks to battle, but guess what, we're also going to have a whole lot of fucking shitcoiners to battle. And as much as I love the organizers here, like, the larger these communities get, the more we get infiltrated with fucking retards who come here and try and kill their own shitcoins. Because at the end of the day, the whole invention of Bitcoin is to take the money, which is the thing, how we measure our interaction, our resources, our time, our effort. That fucking game needs to be fair. That's what we all are craving for, because when the game is fucking fair, we can become the best versions of ourselves. So long as anybody can issue the money, they are the overlord. And that's the fucking problem that Bitcoin solves. It places the money out of all of our hands. No organization, no institution, no government, no group, no fucking nobody. It's in the physical laws of the universe. That's the fucking 0 to 1 moment, and that's what we're here to fight for. That's the fucking wartime that I see.
What else is there other than Bitcoin? What other mechanisms do we have? I mean, we need to internalize that democracy has failed. We will not vote our way out of this. There is absolutely no way. Civil protesting and peaceful protesting does have some usefulness, but as we have seen, the governments are willing to go all the way and crush us as individuals. And I think as a culture and society, people are just not willing to reciprocate in that respect, so that's not happening. So what other mechanisms do we have? We need to bankrupt them. We need to make sure that they cannot pay the imposters, they cannot pay the bureaucrats. The only way we can remove their resources is by creating a Bitcoin standard, which they will not be able to live under. So the libertarian movement I think, has failed. And if Bitcoin is not the answer, then please someone tell me what's the alternative. I think that we should be getting everybody that's involved in politics and trying to make a change, an incremental change, to switch to the Bitcoin mindset. And I'm very happy that with the trucker movement, I hope that we were able to send this message out to freedom fighters all over the world and tell them, guys, Bitcoin is the only way, is the only mechanism that we have that's actually peaceful. So if you want to remain peaceful, then hop onto Bitcoin, because that's our only option.
Yeah, I think that war-like terminology tend to be abused as a metaphor. Like we always say, war on Bitcoin, war with banks, war with commercial banks, central banks. But now we are getting closer to the point where we actually have to discuss literal war. So there are some wars already, like there is one in Ukraine right now. You have people escaping from Ukraine using Bitcoin because their bank accounts are frozen. And then you have people that just happen to be born in Russia and they get their bank accounts closed and they have to use Bitcoin as well. And now you have the nation states themselves receiving Bitcoin donation in order to buy weapons. So the situation is transliterating into actual war, and what we are probably going to witness next, because the game theory there is very difficult to work around, will be a war on Bitcoin. Not just rhetorically, but literally. It starts with different issues, like you have the trackers, you have the people that are non-compliant with some healthcare mandate, then you have the Russians, then you have other people, then you will have, I don't know, the racists or whatever. But then eventually, when Bitcoin does its works, when Bitcoin does starve the central bank fiat system, you will see the full extent of a war on Bitcoiners. And there we have to be ready, because some part of that will be peaceful, some part of that will follow the cypherpunk idea that if you can be private, you don't need physical security because you just need online security, and then you can dissociate your physical identity from your online identity. Part of that is possible, but we will also have to care a little bit more about physical security as well. That's why this talk about Citadel started off as a meme, as a joke, but now people searching for physical security among the like-minded people that are not going to snitch them off to the cops. It started to become something that is less and less a meme, less and less a joke, and more an actual strategy. So we need, Bitcoin is solving the problem on the digital domain, but we still live in the physical domain. And if our freedom in the physical domain gets so corrupted that we cannot access to a computer anymore without a fucking camera on your head. So if we get to North Korea level of physical freedom, Bitcoin is no help at all. Bitcoin cannot help you anymore. In order to use Bitcoin, you need to have that level of physical freedom where you can insert your private key in a computer without being spied upon, where you actually can take your open dime out of the pocket without being arrested. So you need to think about more traditional level of warfare as well.
I remember seeing very interesting photos coming out of Ukraine of politicians crossing the borders with briefcases full of dirty fiat notes. And I'm like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Like, you're a corrupted politician, have you not heard of Bitcoin? And Bitcoin is being used just like kind of any other technology. There's good people who use it, there's bad people who use it. My journalist was in Ukraine and he used Bitcoin as a way to facilitate drivers, as a way to facilitate his news coverage on the ground there. And because the ATMs were shut down, the banks were closed, people couldn't get money in and out, Bitcoin was used as something that helps journalists literally do their job to show the world exactly what's happening. And this is the next question I wanted to ask you guys. What do you see as the next kind of threat against cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, whether it's PR, whether it's the corporate media slandering it or attacking it? What are some of the biggest attacks and what are some ways to help against these attacks and help spread important information? You want to go ahead?
Let me go first, please. So the attack is cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
That's the fucking attack. The easiest way to Trojan horse everyone is to pretend like you've built something technically and architecturally similar, and then add a fucking Wonder Boy. Do some backdoor deals with fucking Klaus and friends, and probably Epstein, because he's still alive, apparently. Maybe not. And then you roll it out to the fucking lemmings, and give them a little bit of UBI, you know, make them pets, and then that's how you move into the global, you know, panopta coin, right? So that's the actual attack. Crypto is the attack on fucking Bitcoin. Make no mistake about it, it's the most effective attack.
I would add something to that. Several years ago, I ran for Parliament in Canada, so I know many of our MPs there. And like all battles, there's many fronts. And I think Bitcoin is the core of it. When we raised all that money, we raised a total of close to $25 million in 3 weeks. That's why all our politicians lost their minds, because that has exceeded any donation record in Canadian political history. And we tried to explain to them, it wasn't money, that was their vote, because there's no longer oppositions in the world. So the multi-strategies on the battlefield are going to be the core of Bitcoin, but also lobbies, and what the other side, if we can use that term lazily, uses, which is called political entryism. That's what's destroying our society on a political level. And we need to get involved. Like, I got involved in politics in 2015, and man, politics sucks. It's the people are the worst people you'll ever meet with. Everybody backstabs everybody. But you got to get involved on the ground level, whether it's, you know, you're going to work for the school treasury, you're going to work on the communal level, your local city council, whatever it is. That's how, and it's over time. This is generational. Also, one of the projects that we're working with some of the people that you know as well is finally the lobby community is aware of Bitcoin. If I went a year ago, I have a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine is a lobbyist, and I called her about 4 weeks ago after the convoy left, and I said, listen, I've met all these really prominent Bitcoiners who I've been listening to on YouTube and podcasts for years, like you. And is there an appetite for lobbying? Because the Bitcoin community hasn't come together with a concerted effort to lobby within parties. She said, give me a few days, let me talk to the CEO. Talked to him, their team. She came back, she said, yeah, now's the time. And we have to thank people like Nayib Bukele for making Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador, because I can now put that on the list of items we want them to lobby for. 6 months or a year ago, they would have thought I was insane. But now a precedent has been set. And you saw what happened with Mexico, they just announced. So it's a battlefield with multi little wars on them, and we have to fight, and everybody can get involved in some way and capacity in your local community. I orange pill boomers on a podcast on regular radio in Toronto, teaching them about Bitcoin. They call me, I don't know, that guy, that young Bitcoin guy or whatever, how they describe me. And now after like 5 or 6 episodes, they're like, yeah, bring that guy back on, Mark. I want to learn a little bit more. So it's not you press the button and everything is over. It's you press the button and you start, and then you go to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. That's just my personal opinion.
I mean, Bitcoin is very difficult to attack. There have been attacks at the protocol level with people trying to change the rules of Bitcoin, notably the Segwit 2x hard fork. And we have proven that the protocol and the network is immutable to these kinds of changes with the victory of the No2x and the UESF movement. So even if they get 90% of the hash power for some reason and they try to change the rules of Bitcoin, well, have fun with your shitcoin. It's not going to be Bitcoin. So I think that attacks at the protocol level at this point are very, very difficult to pull off. I'm sure a lot of people are aware that there are a lot of Bitcoin core developers that are very keen on making these fast and breaking or potentially breaking changes to Bitcoin. But fortunately, we run our own nodes and every node is sovereign, and we are able to defend against these types of attacks. So another obvious vector that they're going to go after, and they have been, is the on-ramp and off-ramp. That is pretty much the only thing that they are able to do, which is to restrict, if you are getting donations in Bitcoin and you want to cash them out for fiat at scale, you are going to need to have an exchange which has banking relationships. And if they don't like what you're doing, they can cut your banking relationships and then restrict the ability of people getting donations in Bitcoin to spend the money. Obviously restrict the ability of people to buy Bitcoin anonymously. That's already been done for many years with the KYC AML regimes all over the world. So that's what they're obviously going to do. So the only possible answer to this problem is to switch our units of account to Bitcoin and to stop converting to fiat. I run a Bitcoin to fiat exchange. I cannot wait for the day that I go out of business because nobody is using fiat. Why are people still using fiat? Honestly, I'm I'm not a fan of stable coins. I think we should stop trying to make the transition, having transitory phases. Like Bitcoin has been around for like 12 years now, okay? So it's really time for everybody to switch their units of account to Bitcoin, because if you're receiving Bitcoin as donation for your freedom movement and you're able to pay your lawyer with Bitcoin, to buy your supplies with Bitcoin, to do everything you want with Bitcoin, the government can't do anything.
Yeah, they're fucked.
They're fucked. They're so fucked. And the only thing that they can possibly do is widespread chain analysis and try to figure out what people are doing. But again, the whole point of chain analysis is to follow transactions that go to the exchange. That is the point of identification. So we need to get people off of the fiat standard as soon as possible. Anything else is just live action role playing, in my opinion, and that needs to happen yesterday.
I really love talking about how the government sucks, but we're out of time, and I really want to thank all the panelists who joined us. Give them a huge round of applause. Thank you so much.